think you should become a member because I think Ryan is like Columbus's hourglass. Own it, people. We have that right here. So I teased a couple of my friends and I said, you have to come tonight. And I do have a few friends who are here that don't normally make it. Thanks, ladies.
Woo! Ladies?
I'm Jared. Because I've been waiting to tell this story for 10 years. I have had a couple of very interesting events that have happened to me in the past few weeks that brought me to this place. A month ago, when the title was announced and it was New Beginnings, I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I could get up and tell this story? But yeah, right. I mean, I've been trying to make this happen for a decade, so the chances are pretty slim. And I'm proud to tell you that I can. It did happen. It happened in a very short amount of time. And it happened because, let me back up a little bit. I got divorced about 10 years ago. And I had two, at that time, I had two very tiny children. They were 2 and 4. And they meant everything to me. They still do. No one can challenge the fierce mama bear love that a parent has for their children. And I didn't think anybody would ever question mine, but in the course of a really nasty and ugly divorce, my children were sort of used as collateral. And I had a lot of my own like shitty guilt that I brought forward and felt like somehow I deserved this, this was my fault, that it would be okay to only see my children sometimes once every 9 days, even though they were very tiny and I had only just weaned my son. And I wasn't really expecting to have a divorce. The last 2 years of my own marriage, I was trying to make it work. I had been with this person for a total of 7 years of really solid togetherness. And it started when I was very, very young. So I had given my whole childhood, essentially my entire adolescence and dating experience over to this one person who was much older than I was, which should have been a huge red flag. But it felt like I was being saved because I had my own life was weird and difficult, and not something I normally talk about. But both of my parents are incredible alcoholics. I mean, if there were an Olympics, they would absolutely take the cake. And they had been divorced when I was 5 years old, and then my dad moved to California, and my mother, I don't really know how to put this delicately, and I don't ever speak any delicate things about my mother, but she fucked her way through life. That's how we found a place to live. That's how we got food. That's how I went to different schools. That's why I lived in 55 different houses. That's why my life was as jacked up as it was. So when I was like 14 years old, I remember looking out the window and seeing my mom and dad. I saw my mom at a pool at my aunt's house making out furiously with some man that was not the man she had arrived at the party with. And I didn't recognize this man. I thought, what a weird bald man did my mom pick up at a family function? And when he threw his head back in gross ecstasy, I realized it was my dad, and he was just totally bald, but I didn't know that because he always wore a trucker hat that we called his Polish toupee. And if you put it on tight enough, as my mother later came to explain to us, because she also had very thin hair, if you put the trucker hat on real tight and then you snap it in the back really, really tight and kind of pull it up a little bit, it lifts your eyebrows, which looks like a facelift. And you can fool everybody with how young you are. Yeah, my parents were hardcore white trash. I mean, seriously. So my parents got back together when I was 14, and initially I was really excited about that because I thought, okay, I get to hang out with my dad, and that's something that everybody wants, right? I mean, what kid after a divorce doesn't like pine for the parent that left and imagine how great it would be if they could come back? But it soon became apparent that my father had no interest in my sister or myself. It was really all about my mom. And so in that way, they had this super weird, super intense, non-stop love story that prevails to this day. And I, at a very early age, just traded all of that to be with this man who was much older than me, who I thought would help me get my shit together because he was slightly mean, and I thought that I needed that. Like, I thought I needed someone who would just kind of rein me in and tell me what to do and how to behave and how to be. And it turned out, of course, don't ever do that. It's a really bad choice. And it kept being a bad choice. And so about 2 years prior to the end of the marriage, I was doing things like calling hypnotists and saying, can you make me love my husband? I'm not kidding. And no one can make you do anything. If you don't, you just don't. And so I was looking up, like, folks out of the library, like, what happens in an arranged marriage? How do people, like, just love each other, even if they clearly don't? Like, they didn't know each other, but they become people who will love each other, so maybe I can do it that way, and that didn't work. And so it got really ugly between the two of us, and I didn't want it to do anything to change it because I had 2 tiny kids, and I hadn't worked in 5 years, and I didn't even graduate from high school, and so I don't have an education, and there's lots of things I don't have. There are lots of tragic, sad stories I could tell you, but none of that really matters, because finally I found it within myself to walk away from that. Fast forward 10 years later, and because I didn't push as hard as I should have at the time, I had to pay this guy child support for 10 years. And I had a fight with him about whether or not I could see my own kids. Now, again, the 2 children I gave birth to in my own house intentionally, with every expectation that that's what you do. That's what I was going to do. I mean, I was in it. I wasn't kidding. I was for real, like, full on, the kind of mom that my mom never was. And so for him to intervene in that way and separate my kids and I was just absolutely heartbreaking. It led to a lot of really bad depression and a lot of secret stuff that you carry with you that you don't tell everybody. Every once in a while you'll find a friend, and you tell them a part of it, and you don't tell anybody ever the whole story, because it's shameful to be honest about what's going on in your own life. And it's hard to tell people what's really happening. It's easier for them to just pretend that you're this capable, strong person, and I get that a lot. People would say to me, you know, but if anyone can make it through this, you're going to be able to do that. You're strong, and you've come through so much. And I would take that, the spirit that it was intended, which is that you think I'm great, but on that backside, in my own private time, and when I was laying awake at night with my head spinning and didn't know how I would make my bills, to pay my bills, or be the kind of parent to my own kids that I needed to be, it kind of hurt my feelings that people, instead of helping me, were just telling me how strong I was and how much I could do it on my own. And I really got to a very bad place, probably like 6 months or so ago. I was having panic attacks and feeling like, I don't think I can keep doing any of this at all. Like, I think I have to be done. And then I didn't do that. I kept going, and I didn't know how I would make that happen. And finally, kind of recently, there's this place that all of my friends go camping. It's down in Hocking Hills, and it's extraordinarily beautiful. It's private land. And when we go with this huge group of families. It's like this enormous tribe. People who all love my children, who know me. These are people I've taken the time to build really strong relationships with. And when you go, it's like the closest thing to family that I've ever felt. And somehow my ex-husband had become the one who was in charge of this process, and had decided, like, I'm going to tell you when you can go, and you can go to this one, and I'll go to this one, so we can't ever be in the same place at the same time. And this year I decided, I'm not going to listen to you anymore. I mean, if I want to go hang out with my friends, you're just going to have to deal with it. You're going to have your big feelings. It's going to be shitty for you, but you'll just have to figure it out. I can't anticipate that this will suck for you and then try to make it better. I'm just going to go. So, but before I did, I received a letter from the state that said, we're going to take your driver's license away from you, which is, I probably have 12 of these because I can't pay the $530 a month I'm supposed to be handing to him. He's also getting his kitchen remodeled, and he just called and asked my best friend to go to a Fiona Apple concert with him, so I mean, I'm sure it's really tragic that he can't get my money. So I wrote him a letter finally, and I was just like, look, I don't have anything left. I'm going to lose my apartment. I've shut off notices on everything, and if I have to go away, and if I have to go home, which I'm actually from Detroit, that's where my boyfriend lives, that's where my family is, the family that I've come to reconnect with. And I will go home eventually. I wanted to stay here while my kids were still in school, and I'd like to do that. But I was trying to explain to him, if I have to go, then you're just on your own. Like this lovely myth you have of being a single dad, which you've never been, you're going to have it. You're going to actually get to find out what that's like. And so I wrote him a letter that was like a total smackdown. It was probably the strongest thing I've ever written in my entire life. And after a decade, like after trying to find a lawyer who could help me, and them all telling me that you have a really strong case, but you don't have any money, so nobody wanted to help me out. Imagine that. And so finally I just wrote this responded back to me the next morning. I was really nervous because I thought, yeah, this is literally my last attempt. This is it. This is all I have left. I've got nothing. And our children were starting, it was affecting them in a really negative way. Like, they were threatening to put me in jail because I couldn't pay my support. Which I have the kids. Another thing I should know is I've had my children half the time. Like, half the time they're in my house. So, you know, if I have to give him money so he can take my friend to a concert, my kids are going to be with their rice and it's extra blankets. So, but none of this made any sense to him. He didn't think of it that way. Until I guess I showed him the light. And at 7:45 the next morning, he wrote me an articulate letter thanking me for taking the time to write everything out and agreeing that we should no longer be fighting with each other, that he was willing to waive my $12,000 in child support arrearages, and that he was willing to take our child support amount down to zero, not asking for anything from him, I didn't want anything from him, and that he was willing to do that for me. And for the first time in probably 10 years, I felt like I could breathe. Like, I actually fell out of my chair and laugh cried for like 10 solid minutes because I didn't think that was ever going to happen. And for all of the friends who have listened to me tell how tragic and sad parts of my life have been, I want to say thank you to you for that, because you helped me find my voice, and I really appreciate that. And I also have come to understand that no one could use my voice for me. That's my job, and